Hello to all. My name is Clement Akumu and I am Assistant Professor in Remote Sensing and Spatial Analysis, Department of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences at Tennessee State University. The title of my presentation today is the use of drones in mapping and monitoring crops. To begin this presentation, I will give you a presentation outline. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, I'll look at the various types of drones. Next, I will talk about drone flight. The next thing I will talk about will be the pseudo color and the true color composite image that we generally obtain from drones. Next, I'll talk about crop applications, and I'll look at the recent drone data analysis that was carried out in the remote sensing laboratory at Tennessee State University, and I'll give my final concluding remarks. So, I'll begin with the types of drones that are commonly used in agricultural applications. So there are two major types of drones commonly used. We have fixed wing drone and we have rotary drones. So what are rotary drones and what are fixed wing drones? So rotary drones, these are drones that looks like helicopters, and they generally have 4 to 8 sets of rotating blades which are generally arranged in the central body or along the two opposite arms of the drones. An example of this: Matrix 300, Inspire 2, Phantom 4. If you look on the slide, these are rotary drones, because if you look at the slide, they have 4 rotating blades arranged around the central body of the drones. The other type of drone is fixed wing drones. So fixed wing drones, these are drones that generally they look like airplanes in their structure. An example is Phoenix 2, that is on the right hand side, below the right hand side on the slide. So the next thing I will talk about is what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of using a rotary or a fixed wing drones. So generally, rotary drones, they have several advantages. The first is that rotary drones are far cheaper compared to a fixed wing drones. The second advantage is that if you are flying with a rotary drone and one of the rotors loses power in mid-air, the drone will still keep flying, it won't stop. So that's one of the advantages of using a rotary drone. Another advantage is that, for example, you might be working in an agricultural field and you are interested in a particular area within the field. You can be able to fly a rotary drone and hover the drone around that particular area over a long period of time to study what is happening with the crops at that particular location. Whereas if you are flying with a fixed wing drone, you don't have that capability to do that. However, there are some limitations or disadvantages with the rotary drones. And one of the disadvantages is that the drone doesn't fly very fast compared to a fixed wing drone. And because of this, it doesn't cover a large geographic area relative to a fixed wing drone. The next disadvantage is that you can't carry very heavy materials with a rotary drone. It doesn't have that capability to carry heavy stuff. Whereas if you are flying with a fixed wing drone, you can be able to carry much heavier material. So those are some of the advantages and disadvantages of using rotary drone. So let's look at also now at the fixed wing drones. The fixed wing drones, they are very advantageous in that they can fly very fast and they can cover a large geographic area in terms of mapping and applications. And also their structure is built to sustain high winds when they are flying. One of the advantages of fixed wing drones. Another advantage is that you can be able to carry heavier materials when you are flying with a fixed wing drones than when you are flying with the rotary drones. However, the disadvantage of one of the major disadvantage in using the fixed wing drone is that most fixed wing drones, they are very, very expensive. That is especially for small farmers or farmers that are not very huge, medium-sized farmers. It might be very expensive for them to afford that kind of drones for the agricultural applications. So this slide shows you actually a flight plan that we conducted a few years ago using Phantom 4 Pro drone. So we're able to use the drone to fly over a particular agricultural plot area. The left hand side of the drone shows you the flight path, and the right hand side shows you a 3D of the entire drone flight. If you look at the right hand side of the screen, you're going to find that you see the dotted whitish areas shows you all the areas in which drone images were captured during the flight. This particular slide shows you a pseudo color and a true color composite image. The left hand side is a pseudo color image, and the right hand side is a true color composite image. So what are true colors and what are pseudo color images? So basically, true color images, these are when the images are captured by the drone, they contain spectral information about the crops, which is actually how the crops interact with sunlight during periods of drone capturing. So when we go back to the laboratory, we generally extract all these images, and these images are in grayscale pseudo-color format. So what we do is we combine the images, and then we also combine the bands to create a true color composite image, which is basically an RGB image, red, blue, and green image. And with this, now we can be able to carry out so many applications in terms of understanding crop condition and crop performance. This slide shows some of the application of drone technology in crop mapping and monitoring. The first is phenotyping. We can use drone technology to understand how crop varieties perform within an environmental condition, and based on the data, we can be able to pick up varieties that perform well and those that don't perform well for improvement. The second is looking at plant classification. We can use drone technology to map and classify crops in broader classes such as feed crops, vegetables, oil crops, industrial crops. So based on that, we can be able to easily map and classify using drone data. The third is we can classify also and map crops at species level. So for example, we can be able to map and monitor crops like soybean, corn, lettuce, spinach at species level. The third application is looking at weed detection. We can use drone technology to detect weeds within a particular agricultural production system. If you look at the image on the right hand side, you'll be able to identify that the red area shows Palmer amaranth, the yellow shows tall water hemp, and the green shows corn. So we're able to use drone technology to detect these weed types and also monitor them over time. So drone technology provides that capability to look at weed detection and also rates of infestation. This slide further shows some of the application of drone technology in agricultural crop mapping and monitoring. So another application is in crop health mapping. So if you look at the image on the right hand side, you'll be able to notice that you have red yellow, and green areas. The red areas are non-vegetated areas. The yellowish areas are actually vegetation, but the vegetation are in poor quality. And the greener areas are showing vegetation that are actually in high quality. So based on drone data, we can be able to map and monitor the quality or the health of vegetation within a particular production system. And based on the health of the vegetation, this can help us to decide in terms of fertilizer application and management. The next application of drone technology is looking at diseases in the field. So we can use drone technology to identify changes in canopy temperatures and plant quality. And these changes in canopy temperatures we can use those changes to identify areas in the field with diseases outbreak. The next application is looking at plant growth. So if we take a drone data, we can look at the digital surface model of the crops over time, and based on that we can be able to estimate the rate of growth of that crop within that particular system. Another application is looking at water management. We can use drone data to identify areas in the field that are actually wetter and areas that are actually drier within an agricultural production system. And based on that data, we can be able to decide or identify areas that require irrigation and areas that don't require irrigation for proper water management. This slide shows actually a digital surface model of one of the plots with canola plants that we were able to capture a few years ago. So the yellowish parts of the plot, the yellowish colors shows the flowering of the canola plants when the images were captured. And based on the digital surface model of this crop, we can be able to estimate the height of the crop during the period of data capturing. And if we do that over different period of time, we can be able to monitor the growth of this canola at that particular location during the growing season. So I've talked about drone technology and applications in agricultural crop mapping and monitoring. This particular slide I'm showing you now is actually giving you an example of one other project that we did in the remote sensing laboratory at Tennessee State University, where we use drone technology to understand change in the quality of pasture as a result of flood event. So in February of 2019, Cheatham County, Daviess County, and other surrounding counties experienced a significant flood event. So what we did was we tried to understand the effect of that flooding on the quality of pasture in the cattle research station in Cheatham County. So we went there during the flood period and we took a drone image of the flooding that occurred in the research station. So the image in the center shows you the flooding that occurred. And a month before the date of flooding, we were able to acquire a satellite image of that same area. That's the image on the left hand side. And a month after the flooding, we went back to the same location and acquired a drone data of the area. So we tried to use the pre-data and the post-data to understand what happened to the quality of the pasture before and after the flood event. This slide shows the result we obtained from mapping and monitoring the quality of the pasture pre and post flood event at Cheatham County. As you see from the graph, you can see that the quality of the pasture actually increased by about 100% before flooding occurred and after flooding occurred, which implies that the flooding actually increased the vigor and the greenness of the pasture for the cattle. So basically the flooding was a good thing that happened in that area for the cattle. As concluding remarks, I've talked about drones and the different types of drones, the two major types of drones, which are rotary drones and fixed wing drones. I also talked a little bit about the types of data that we get from drones, the images that we capture from drones, and how we process them for applications in terms of crop mapping and monitoring. Finally, I give an example of a project that we recently completed in the remote sensing laboratory, where we use drone technology to understand pasture quality pre and post flood event, and we found that the pasture quality increased by about 100% after flooding. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and if you have any questions, let me know.